Zara set the table as she did every evening, moving almost on autopilot. The clink of silverware against plates was the only real sound in the room. She placed a steaming dish of Jude's favorite stew, okra and lamb, onto the center of the table. Her hands trembled slightly, remembering the early days of their marriage when this meal would have filled him with excitement. Now, she could sense the tension thick in the air. Jude was seated at the far end of the table, his broad shoulders hunched over the glow of his phone screen. Zara stood for a moment, waiting for the slightest acknowledgement. Maybe you would look up and say, "Thank you, darling. I've had a rough day." But the seconds passed, and he remained fixated on his phone. In the hush of the dining room, the overhead chandelier cast a soft glow, illuminating the fatigue in Zara's eyes. She finally lowered herself into the seat across from him and cleared her throat as gently as possible. "You can serve yourself," she said softly, pushing the bowl toward him. Jude scrolled for a moment longer, then placed his phone face down. His expression was an unreadable mixture of indifference and annoyance. He glanced at the steaming bowl with mild contempt. "I used to love this," he said, prodding the stew with a spoon, "but now it just tastes like pity." Zara felt her throat tighten. She remembered the warmth of the early days, cooking together, joking in the kitchen about whose seasoning was better, dancing to old songs while the stew simmered. That memory now felt like it belonged to someone else's life. She tried to hide the hurt. "I just thought, maybe you'd still enjoy." He cut her off. "Let's just eat." Silence enveloped them once more. The clink of spoons against plates was oddly deafening. Every now and then, Zara glanced up, hoping to find even a flicker of warmth in Jude's eyes. She found only cold distance. The meal dragged on, each spoonful tasting more like heartbreak than nourishment. When Jude abruptly stood up, she almost jumped. He reached for his phone, shoved it into his pocket, and muttered, "I'm going out for a while." She wanted to ask where, but the question lodged itself in her chest. The front door slammed shut, rattling the quiet house. Zara sat alone at the dinner table, stew untouched, feeling more alone than she ever had before. In that final moment of the chapter, she leaned back in her chair, a single tear slipping down her cheek. The silence, once a comfort, now felt like a deafening reminder that something was terribly wrong. Tomorrow, she told herself, maybe tomorrow he'll come home and talk. But deep down, a voice whispered that tomorrow would only bring more heartbreak. The next morning, Zara woke before dawn. She couldn't sleep, not with the knot of worry twisting inside her. The bathroom lights were harsh and clinical as she stared at her reflection in the mirror. Bloodshot eyes, dark circles, the look of a woman fighting a battle no one else could see. On the countertop, a pregnancy test lay face down. She had taken it just minutes ago, after days of tracking her cycle, feeding herself with fragile hope. Her hands shook as she finally gathered the courage to pick it up. Negative. Zara's heart plummeted. It was as if the small plastic stick had the power to define her entire worth. Tears brimmed in her eyes, but she bit her lip to stop them. She heard Jude stirring in the bedroom. Quickly, she tossed the test in the trash and buried it under tissue. Seconds later, Jude appeared in the doorway. His gaze flicked from her face to the trash can. He seemed to understand instantly. He huffed, crossing his arms. "Again," he said, voice tight with frustration. Zara pressed her hands against the cold sink. "Yes. The results are the same." His expression hardened. "I don't know why I keep letting myself hope." The words came out almost like a sneer. Hope sounded like a curse. She tried to keep her composure. "We could see a specialist again," Dr. Felix said. Jude cut her off. "More money, more disappointment." He breathed out heavily. "Can't even give me a child." "What can you give me?" That sentence stabbed Zara like a knife. Each syllable echoed in her mind, "What can you give me?" A wave of shame washed over her. She wanted to shout that she had given her love, her loyalty, and her sacrifice. but her voice caught in her throat. "I'll try harder," she whispered, hating how desperate she sounded. Jude let out a derisive laugh. "I'm going out." He turned and left without another word, leaving Zara to stand there, tears pooling in her eyes. She sank onto the cold bathroom floor, hugging her knees. The quiet meltdown she had fought all morning finally came. She cried in muffled sobs, feeling hollow and helpless. The negative test sat in the trash, another silent reminder of the dreams she couldn't fulfill. Zara had just finished folding laundry in the living room when the front door slammed open with a force that made her jump. Miriam, Jude's mother, stormed in like a furious storm cloud. Her face was locked in a scowl that deepened with every step closer to Zara. "Where is my son?" Miriam snapped, dropping her purse on the nearest chair. Zara swallowed. He went out. He didn't say where." Miriam let out a bitter laugh. "Of course not. Why would he tell you? You can't even carry on our family name, and you still think you have a place in this house?" Zara gripped a towel in her hands, her knuckles whitening. She knew Miriam harbored resentment towards her, but it had never been this direct, this cruel. "I'm doing my best," she murmured, though her voice shook. "Your best?" Miriam's voice rose. "A barren woman should stay out of our bloodline. Do you think I want a daughter-in-law who can't bear grandchildren?" Those words hung heavy in the air. Zara could practically feel the room closing in on her, as though Miriam's hatred had sucked out all the oxygen. In the past, Jude would at least attempt to mediate when his mother started hurling insults. But now, in his absence, Zara was left to face the storm alone. She looked at Miriam, pleading silently. Just then, Jude entered the house, carrying a set of car keys and a weary expression. He stopped short at the sight of his mother, still fuming, and his wife, on the verge of tears. For a brief moment, hope flickered in Zara's heart. Would he defend me? Miriam turned on her son immediately. "Jude, do you realize the shame she's bringing on our family? This woman is standing in the way of your legacy." A long silence followed. Jude locked eyes with Zara, and her stare begged for him to say something, anything, in her defense. But he looked away, jaw tightening. "You heard what my mother said," he muttered finally. Zara's eyes welled up. He wasn't going to stand up for her. His own mother's toxic words would go unchallenged. Miriam gave a triumphant smirk. "I have to go," Jude muttered, stepping out again, leaving Zara and Miriam staring at each other. Zara's lips trembled, but she said nothing, feeling a piece of her heart splinter at his betrayal. Miriam snorted. "You should do him a favor and leave," she hissed before following her son out. Zara listened to their footsteps fade, her entire body trembling. Alone in the living room, she sank onto the couch, tears escaping her eyes once again. She felt like a ghost in her own home, condemned for something beyond her control. In that dark moment, she could only think, how much more can I bear? Late that night, Zara sat on the living room couch, scrolling through baby shower photos on her phone. Friends and acquaintances from college posted pictures of their growing families, their living rooms filled with gifts and the laughter of loved ones. Each photo felt like a small thorn pricking at her heart. It was nearly midnight when Jude finally came home. The moment he walked in, Zara noticed the faint smell of perfume that wasn't hers. Panic and hurt collided in her mind, but she tried to steady her voice. "Where have you been?" she asked carefully, not wanting to spark immediate rage. Jude tossed his car keys onto the coffee table. "Does it matter?" Zara got up from the couch and stood in front of him, arms crossed. Yes, it does matter. You're my husband. I don't even know who you're with, or if you're safe." He laughed humorlessly. "Safe from what? From you? I'm perfectly fine." Her eyes narrowed. "I never said you needed saving from me. I worry about us. We're drifting apart, Jude." I can't be the only one who sees that. His expression hardened, and something in his gaze grew wild with frustration. Maybe we are drifting, he bit out. I'm tired. Tired of the fights, the disappointments, the looks of pity you give me every time you fail another test. The word fail stung. Zara's eyes flashed with pain. We both wanted a child. This isn't just my fault. He scoffed, tossing his jacket onto a chair. Oh, believe me, Zara. It is your fault. I've done my part. It's you who can't conceive. Her jaw dropped. How can you say that? Suddenly, Jude's voice thundered, echoing through the house, no one will ever love you. He pointed a trembling finger at her. Do you hear me? No one. Not me, not my mother, not anyone in this world. And you deserve it. Zara's heart pounded like a drum. She felt as though the walls were closing in. Tears blurred her vision. Jude, please, she whispered. We can go to counseling, or... I regret marrying you, he roared, stepping closer, face contorted with rage. I regret every single day I've wasted trying to make this work. Zara broke down, sobbing. Jude stared at her for a moment, breathing heavily, then grabbed his keys again. I'm leaving, he said, voice still seething. Don't wait up. The door slammed behind him, and Zara collapsed onto the floor. Her sobs echoed in the empty house. Something deep within her had cracked. She felt a wave of despair threatening to pull her under. But amidst the heartbreak, there was a flicker of another emotion, anger. His words reverberated, no one will ever love you. And yet, as she crouched on the floor, tears streaming, a small part of her refused to believe it. She felt the faintest stirrings of determination. Some things had to change, they had to, or she would lose herself entirely. The next morning, the house was eerily quiet. Zara moved like a ghost as she cleaned up the shattered pieces of their argument, tipped over chairs, a wine glass broken in the heat of shouting, the memories of hateful words still echoing in every corner. After tidying, she decided she needed some fresh air. She walked to the mailbox at the edge of their driveway, hoping the sunlight would ease the heaviness in her heart. As she sifted through bills and advertisements, a small slip of paper caught her attention. It was a receipt from a high-end jewelry store. Frowning, she read the details, a diamond necklace worth thousands of dollars. Her first thought was that Jude had purchased something for her, maybe an apology gift, or a belated anniversary present. But as she scanned the date, she realized the purchase was made weeks ago. She had never received a necklace. A wave of nausea hit her. Could it be for someone else? The perfume scent from last night returned to her mind like a haunting clue. Anxiety squeezed her chest. When Jude came home that evening, he found Zara standing in the living room, receipt in hand. She didn't wait for him to speak. Where is the diamond necklace? She spoke quietly, but her voice was lined with steel. Jude froze for a second, then shrugged. Why does it matter? She held the receipt up, her hands shaking. You spent thousands on a gift. I never got it. That's not exactly something you can explain away with a casual shrug. He rolled his eyes. I bought it. So what? So what? Zara's voice trembled with a mix of fury and heartbreak. If it wasn't for me, who was it for? Jude exhaled, shoulders slumping as though he was tired of the entire conversation. She's fertile. That's enough. It took Zara a moment to register his words. Her mind reeled. The reality of his betrayal sank in like a dagger. She felt her cheeks burn with humiliation. He was openly admitting it. Tears gathered in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall in front of him. Instead, she nodded slowly, as if all the puzzle pieces finally made sense. She took a step back, brushing past him. You know what, she said, her voice quiet yet firm. I'm done. Jude's gaze flicked to her. What are you talking about? Zara lifted her chin, meeting his eyes with a coldness she hadn't known she possessed. This marriage. This life of lies and disrespect. I won't be the woman you can insult and cheat on. He smirked. Oh, so you're going to leave me? Good luck. No man wants a woman who can't have children. Zara felt her resolve hardening. The tears threatened to spill, but she held them back by some miracle. She turned her back on him. We'll see about that, she said. Because I'm leaving, and I'm leaving now. She didn't wait for his reaction. This was her final straw. She stormed down the hallway, heart pounding, determined not to let him see her cry again. Zara flung open the closet doors, hastily pulling out her clothes and tossing them into a single suitcase. Memories flooded her as she touched each article of clothing, dinners out, birthdays, anniversaries. Every piece carried a fragment of the life she once believed in. Now, it felt like she was packing up the remnants of a shattered dream. She could hear Jude pacing in the living room, occasionally shouting an insult or a half-hearted attempt to push blame onto her. But the chaos felt distant. Her mind was made up. She grabbed a picture frame from the nightstand, her and Jude on their wedding day, smiling under a cascade of flowers. She stared at it for a moment, tears burning her eyes. Then, with trembling hands, she slid the photo out of the frame. She tore it in half, letting his face drop to the floor. She kept her half, tucking it away in a small zippered pouch. When she emerged into the living room, Jude was leaning against the wall, arms folded. He watched her with an air of lazy defiance, as though he expected her to cave. You're really doing this? He asked. His tone was surprisingly calm, but the coldness in his eyes told another story. Zara looked at him sadly. This was the man she once adored. Yes, she said. I won't let you break me any more than you already have. She pulled a folded sheet of paper from her purse. Here's the initial divorce paper. I'll find a lawyer. You'll get the rest. He took the paper without reading it, a twisted smile crossing his face. Fine. See if your lawyer can fix that broken womb while you're at it. Zara swallowed the pain his words caused. Without a word, she walked to the front door, suitcase dragging behind her. She paused briefly, resting her hand on the doorknob, imagining all the heartbreak tied to this place. Then she stepped outside. The air was cool and quiet, stars scattered in the night sky. She breathed in, feeling tears finally spill down her cheeks, but there was also a strange sense of relief. She was leaving behind the prison of a loveless marriage. When she reached the sidewalk, she looked back only once at the house. In the window, she could see Jude's silhouette. He made no move to stop her. 1,000 regrets and heartbreaks threatened to crush her in that moment, but she stood firm. I will survive this, she thought, hugging her suitcase close. I have to. Zara spent that night in a modest motel on the outskirts of town. The neon sign outside her window flickered on and off, casting eerie shadows against the walls. She barely slept, her mind churning with all that had transpired. In the gray light of dawn, she dragged herself to the bathroom. Her reflection stared back at her, hair disheveled, eyes puffy and swollen from crying. Exhaustion etched itself into every corner of her face. She almost didn't recognize herself. Who am I? She whispered aloud. She turned on the faucet and splashed cold water on her face. Droplets dripped from her chin as she forced herself to hold her own gaze in the mirror. All her life, she'd been labeled a good daughter, a loving wife, a potential mother. Now, every label felt stripped away, leaving her feeling raw and undefined. But beneath her grief and confusion, she glimpsed a flicker of something else. Was it strength? A buried sense of self that had been overshadowed by Jude's cruelty and Miriam's scorn? She leaned closer to the mirror. It's not over yet, she said, voice trembling but determined. I'm still here. A memory surfaced. An old friend once told her that when you have nothing left to lose, you have everything to gain. She tried to let that thought fuel her as she stepped out of the bathroom, rummaging through her suitcase for something clean to wear. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. With shaking hands, she opened it. It was a short note from her friend Amina, who had heard the rumors of Zara's sudden split. "I'm here, Zara. Whatever you need, I've got you." Zara closed her eyes, relief and gratitude flooding her. She typed back, "I need a place to stay. Can you help?" A moment later, Amina's reply arrived, "Come over. I'll put the kettle on." For the first time in what felt like ages, Zara allowed herself a small smile. She was bruised, battered emotionally, but not alone. The reflection in the mirror no longer looked quite so defeated. She pulled her suitcase to the door, drew in a deep breath, and whispered to herself, "I'm not giving up. Not this time." Amina lived in a cozy apartment filled with mismatched furniture, warm rugs, and potted plants that seemed to greet you at every turn. The moment Zara stepped inside, she was enveloped in a tight hug. "My dear," Amina murmured, guiding Zara to a worn but comfortable couch. "I've been worried sick since I heard. You should have called earlier." Zara set her suitcase down, exhaustion evident in her posture. "I didn't know where else to go," she admitted softly. Amina headed to the kitchenette, put on a kettle, and then settled next to Zara. "Well, you're here now. And I'm not letting you go anywhere until we figure out your next steps." Zara tried to hold back tears but failed. They spilled over as she recounted the entire harrowing saga, Jude's coldness, Miriam's cruelty, the cheating, the diamond necklace. Amina listened intently, occasionally squeezing Zara's hand or offering tissues. "I gave up so much for him," Zara whispered, voice trembling. "My dreams, my goals. I just wanted to be a good wife, a mother. But now I feel like I'm nothing." Amina's eyes flared with empathy. "You're not nothing," she said firmly. She rose from the couch and walked to a small bookshelf crammed with old journals and notebooks. From the bottom shelf, she pulled out a faded notebook with a floral design. "You remember this?" Amina asked, handing it to Zara. Zara took the notebook cautiously. Her name was scrawled on the front in youthful handwriting. She flipped it open, revealing pages of sketches, diagrams, and notes. A wave of nostalgia washed over her. "This was my dream, back in high school," Zara said, almost in disbelief. The pages outlined a plan for a small community clinic, ideas for mental health services, maternal care, nutritional programs. She had written about wanting to help women in underprivileged neighborhoods, offering them the support she never had growing up. "You wanted to open a clinic," Amina reminded her gently, "and you were so passionate about it. You used to tell me it would be a haven for women who felt hopeless. You never got around to doing it because, well, life happened." Zara traced the faded ink with her fingertip. She remembered how unstoppable she'd felt back then. Before Jude, before the heartbreak, she had dreams bigger than her circumstances. Now, she wondered if she could find that version of herself again. Amina placed a steaming cup of tea in Zara's hands, the fragrance soothing. "You buried that dream for him. But guess what? You're free now. Maybe it's time you resurrected it." Zara looked up at her friend. Hope flickered. "Do you really think I can?" Amina nodded firmly. "Absolutely. And I'll be there every step of the way. But first, you need to remember who you are, beyond Jude, beyond infertility, beyond all that pain." Tears welled in Zara's eyes again, but this time they were a mix of sadness and a budding determination. She clutched the notebook close, feeling as though she was rediscovering a part of her soul. For the first night in a long time, she slept with a hint of hope in her heart. 2 weeks later, Zara took a bold step toward reclaiming herself. She walked through the doors of a local community health center, the same one she had volunteered at briefly many years ago. The building was small and somewhat run down, but it buzzed with life. Mothers shuffled in with strollers, elderly patients chatted in the waiting area, and the scent of disinfectant lingered in the hallways. The volunteer coordinator, an older woman named Anita, greeted Zara with a warm smile. "I was surprised to get your call," she said, "but I'm glad to see you back. We could really use the extra hands." Zara nodded, a flutter of nerves in her stomach. "I'm just looking for a way to be useful," she said softly. Anita handed her a clipboard. "We have a shortage of helpers in the maternal health wing. A lot of new mothers come in for checkups and consultations, and they often need emotional support just as much as medical advice." Zara swallowed hard. She thought about her own struggle with infertility. Would it be painful to be around pregnant women or new mothers all day? Yet, something inside her insisted that this was exactly where she needed to be. If she couldn't have her own child, maybe she could still offer compassion and help. She spent the next hours assisting mothers with paperwork, guiding them to doctors, and comforting anxious women awaiting test results. Surprisingly, instead of deepening her sorrow, she found a renewed sense of purpose in their presence. She saw their hope, their fears, their joy at each new heartbeat. And she found herself holding their hands, offering soft words of encouragement as they navigated a world that once felt so far from her own. Late in the afternoon, as the crowd thinned, a young nurse named Carrie approached Zara with a cup of water. "You've been running around all day," Carrie said, smiling. "Take a break." Zara accepted gratefully. "Thanks." They leaned against the wall, watching a mother gently cradle her newborn in the waiting area. "You're so good at this," Carrie noted. "All day, you've been calming people's nerves, making them feel safe. It's like you were born to do this." A pang of longing and pride hit Zara simultaneously. She remembered how Jude had made her feel worthless, incapable of nurturing life. But here, among these mothers, she felt more maternal than ever. "I just understand what it's like to need kindness," Zara finally said. Carrie nodded, placing a hand on Zara's shoulder. "Don't stop doing what you're doing. You're making a difference. Some of these women don't have supportive families or partners. They see you as a pillar." That evening, as Zara left the health center, a content exhaustion washed over her. For the first time in years, she felt a glimmer of fulfillment. "This is how I heal," she thought, stepping out into the cool twilight. "By giving others what I once prayed for." A few weeks into Zara's volunteer work, she noticed a new face making rounds in the maternal health wing, Dr. Felix. He was a tall man with kind eyes, probably in his early 40s, who always greeted patients with a soothing voice and a reassuring smile. Zara first met him while assisting a young pregnant woman who had complications. The woman was distraught, tears streaming down her face, fearing for her baby's health. Zara offered comforting words while Dr. Felix performed an ultrasound with gentle expertise. After ensuring the patient was stable, Dr. Felix turned his attention to Zara. "You've got a real gift," he said as they walked out of the exam room. "You seem to know exactly what to say to calm people." Zara felt a flush of gratitude. "I'm just trying to be there for them." He nodded thoughtfully. "I've been observing you these past few days. You're more than just a volunteer. You truly connect with these mothers on an emotional level." They reached a small break room. Dr. Felix offered Zara a seat, then poured 2 cups of lukewarm coffee. "I also heard from Anita that you have an interest in opening a clinic someday?" Zara blinked, surprised that Anita had shared her old dream. "I did have that dream. Once." She paused. But life got in the way. Dr. Felix leaned forward, a spark of interest in his eyes. "Ever considered going back to school? Or taking some courses in maternal care and counseling? The world needs more people like you in this field." She exhaled, a mix of excitement and doubt swirling inside. "I wouldn't know where to start. And financially, I'm sort of rebuilding my life right now." Dr. Felix tapped his fingers on the table. We have a new initiative here, a pilot program for women struggling with fertility issues, postpartum depression, and a range of maternal health challenges. We're looking for someone with empathy and leadership skills to help coordinate our outreach. You'd be trained on the job, get paid, and have the opportunity to shape the program. I can even connect you with resources for advanced training. Zara's heart pounded. Could this be real? She glanced down at her trembling hands. That's quite an offer, she managed. I'm not even a certified professional. You have personal experience, which sometimes is worth more, Dr. Felix replied gently. Think about it. And one more thing, there's a new breakthrough fertility treatment we're researching. If motherhood is still something you want, you could explore the possibility under medical guidance. Zara inhaled sharply, tears threatening. The idea of having a child, of not being entirely out of options, sparked both hope and fear. She could still hear Jude's voice mocking her. But Dr. Felix's genuine demeanor reassured her. She swallowed, attempting to steady her voice. I'll think about it. Thank you. As she left the clinic that evening, a strange sense of possibility welled inside her. She walked home, the dusk sky painted in soft purples and oranges, thinking that maybe, just maybe, she was on the cusp of a new chapter, one where her dreams no longer had to be buried. News traveled fast among the clinic staff. Zara had accepted Dr. Felix's proposition to coordinate the pilot program. Her days were suddenly filled with training sessions, workshops, and heartfelt conversations with women who needed every ounce of compassion they could get. Some days, she found herself utterly exhausted, but it was a good kind of tired, the feeling of working towards something meaningful. The women she helped began to affectionately call her Mama Zara, a nickname that caught her off guard at first. She wasn't a mother, technically. But in a way, she realized, motherhood could transcend biology. It was in the way she nurtured them, comforted them, and fought for better care. One evening, after a particularly hectic shift, she found a small handmade card on her makeshift desk. On the front was a crayon drawing of a smiling woman with a baby in her arms, signed by a young mother she'd helped a week earlier. Thank you, Mama Zara, for believing in us. Tears came instantly. She traced her fingertips over the heartfelt words. It felt like a validation she never thought she'd experience. She recalled all the times Jude's mother, Miriam, had spat the word barren at her, as though that was all she'd ever be. Now, she was receiving messages that declared her a maternal figure to so many. Anita found her hunched over the card and patted her shoulder. People see you as their rock here. Keep going. You're changing lives. Through word of mouth and social media posts, more and more women came to the clinic requesting Zara specifically. Dr. Felix introduced her to community leaders, potential donors, and even politicians interested in improving maternal health care in underprivileged areas. She felt overwhelmed at times, but also invigorated by the sense of purpose blossoming within her. A few months later, the clinic decided to name a small counseling room after Zara, dedicating a plaque that read, "The Zara Albright Women's Empowerment Room." When they unveiled it, applause filled the corridor. Overwhelmed by emotion, Zara couldn't contain her tears. As the applause died down, Dr. Felix handed her the microphone. She cleared her throat, voice trembling. "I'm so honored," she began, scanning the room full of supportive faces. "A year ago, I was in a place so dark, I never imagined standing here. But this place, all of you, gave me hope. And I promise to keep paying it forward." The crowd cheered, and for the first time in a very long while, Zara felt genuinely happy. She left the clinic that day with renewed determination, a vibrant energy coursing through her veins. She might have lost her marriage, but she had found herself. And in that discovery, she realized she would never quit on the things she believed in. A storm raged outside, heavy raindrops pelting the clinic's roof and windows. Zara had stayed late to finalize paperwork. Lightning illuminated the parking lot, and thunder rattled the glass doors. She sipped her now cold coffee, contemplating whether to brave the storm or wait it out a bit longer. Suddenly, above the howling wind, she heard a faint tapping at the clinic's front door. At first, she assumed it was just branches hitting the glass. But then it came again, persistent and deliberate. Confused, she set her cup down and walked toward the entrance. As she approached, she thought she saw small figures huddled against the door, drenched from the rain. Her heart skipped a beat. She opened the door and found two small children, a boy and a girl, twins by the look of it, clutching each other's hands. They were soaked to the bone, shivering, eyes wide with fear. Zara quickly ushered them inside. "Where are your parents?" she asked gently, dropping to her knees to meet their eye level. They didn't answer, only gazed at her with a mixture of relief and apprehension. The girl clutched a small pendant in her hand. Zara ushered them into the warmest corridor and fetched blankets from the supply closet. She wrapped them around the children's shaking shoulders. "It's okay," she soothed. "You're safe now." As she carefully examined them for any injuries, she noticed the pendant the girl was holding. It bore a name that made Zara's breath catch in her throat, Khadija. That was her late grandmother's name, etched in a delicate script. Shock coursed through her. "Where did you get this?" Zara asked softly, pointing to the pendant. The little girl stared at it, then clung to Zara's arm. She was either too frightened or too young to explain. Zara's mind swirled. Could this be a coincidence? She checked for any note or identification on the children's clothing but found none. She was about to call Dr. Felix when the little boy tugged at her sleeve. He whispered a single word that made the hairs on the back of her neck stand up. "Mama?" Zara felt her heart lurch. The word hung in the air like a ghostly echo. She swallowed hard. Did they think she was their mother? Or were they searching for one? She couldn't be sure, but the fear and desperation in their eyes compelled her to hold them close. That night, lightning flashed and thunder shook the building, but Zara stayed with the twins. She comforted them, humming lullabies she hadn't sung in years. A storm of questions swirled in her mind. Who are they? Why do they have my grandmother's name on a pendant? She prayed silently that come morning, she would have some answers. But for now, her only concern was their safety. The next morning brought calm skies. Dr. Felix arrived early to find Zara in the exam room with the twins, who had finally fallen asleep on a small cot. Concern etched his face. "Any idea who they are?" he asked quietly. Zara shook her head, recounting the events of the previous night and showing him the mysterious pendant. Dr. Felix gently examined the children, making sure they had no injuries or illnesses. "They seem malnourished," he noted, "but otherwise healthy. We should alert social services." Zara bit her lip. Something in her gut told her there was more to the story. The pendant with her grandmother's name felt like an impossible clue. "Dr. Felix," she began tentatively, "I know this sounds strange, but can we do a DNA test? I have this feeling." She couldn't articulate it fully. It sounded irrational. But she remembered the years of IVF attempts, the frozen embryos that she and Jude had once discussed. Part of her wondered if these twins could somehow be connected to her. It was crazy, but she couldn't shake the thought. Dr. Felix hesitated only for a moment. Then he nodded. "We can do a basic test here. If you give a sample, we can see if there's a biological match." Zara agreed, her heart pounding. She provided the necessary samples, all the while feeling dizzy with the enormity of what she was doing. Over the next few days, she waited anxiously for the test results. She stayed near the twins whenever possible, reading them stories, feeding them, trying to coax out any information about their parents or home. They remained mostly silent, clinging to her protectively, as though she were their safe harbor. Finally, Dr. Felix called her into his office with an unreadable expression. She sat down, hands clammy. He slid a paper across the desk. "It confirms a biological relation," he said gently, meeting her stunned gaze. "Zara, these twins, they're yours." Her world seemed to tilt on its axis. She struggled to breathe, tears pricking her eyes. How is that possible?" she stammered. Dr. Felix sighed. "You mentioned you and your ex-husband had done IVF in the past. Sometimes clinics make mistakes, or, well, it's also possible that your embryos were taken without your knowledge. But the science is clear, these children share your DNA." Zara felt the tears flow freely now. She recalled signing forms, storing embryos for future attempts, then losing track when her marriage fell apart. Could someone have stolen them? Implanted them elsewhere? The question was horrifying, yet the twins in the next room were living proof. She gripped the edge of the desk. "They're mine," she whispered, voice shaking with awe and heartbreak. All the years of being called barren, all the nights she'd cried over negative tests, and here they were, two living, breathing miracles. As she left Dr. Felix's office, the paper clutched in her trembling hand, a tidal wave of emotions overwhelmed her, anger at the theft, astonishment at the turn of events, and an indescribable sense of responsibility. The twins were her children, and she had to protect them at all costs. In another part of the city, Jude was facing a slow-burning catastrophe. His new relationship, the one he had flaunted publicly, had just imploded. The woman, who had become pregnant, left him for someone wealthier, taking any illusions of familial bliss with her. On top of that, Jude's business dealings had come under investigation for shady accounting practices. Financial strains mounted, and investors pulled out. Suddenly, the empire he'd worked so hard to build was on the brink of collapse. He sat in his upscale office, staring at the data on his computer. Every graph showed a downward spiral. His phone buzzed incessantly with calls from creditors. He ran a hand through his hair, cursing under his breath. Miriam, his mother, barged in unannounced, as she often did. Her face was contorted with worry. "What's going on, Jude? People are talking. They're saying you might lose everything." Jude slammed his laptop shut. "I don't want to talk about it." His tone was laced with bitterness. Miriam approached, trying a softer tactic. "What about that new woman? The one who was pregnant?" She paused. "We were supposed to get a grandchild." Jude shook his head, jaw clenched. "She's gone. She wanted someone else with deeper pockets." Miriam let out a heavy sigh. She walked over to the large window overlooking the city skyline. After a moment, she spoke quietly. "Sometimes I think about Zara." At that name, Jude stiffened. He recalled the final image of her leaving with a single suitcase, the divorce papers on the table. "No one will ever love you," he had screamed. "Don't start," he muttered, rubbing his temples. But a flicker of regret pricked at him. Despite all his anger, Zara had never been malicious. In fact, she had quietly left his life rather than dragging him through scandal. Miriam looked at her son. If she had just gotten pregnant, none of this would have happened. Now look where we are. Jude winced. A part of him knew how twisted that statement was. But he had once believed it himself, that a child would have sealed their happiness. Yet here I am, childless and alone. Outside, thunder rumbled, echoing his internal turmoil. Jude glanced at his phone, half expecting a call or text from the woman he was with. But there was nothing. For the first time in a while, he remembered Zara's soft voice, her patient smiles, her unwavering support when he was just starting his business. As he stared at the empty inbox, a creeping sense of guilt began to gnaw at him. What if I was wrong? The question lingered, but he pushed it aside. He had bigger problems to deal with: financial ruin, potential lawsuits, and a mother who was now deeply disappointed. Little did he know, an even bigger shock awaited him just around the corner. Life was a whirlwind for Zara as she navigated her new role as the twins' caretaker and continued working at the clinic. Legalities around formally adopting them needed sorting, but Dr. Felix vouched for her, insisting they gather all necessary paperwork. Social services, though initially skeptical, recognized the extraordinary circumstances, confirmed by DNA tests, and began the process of transferring guardianship to Zara. One afternoon, in the midst of balancing maternal responsibilities and her job, Zara received a phone call from a prominent health organization. They invited her to speak at a major conference focusing on maternal health and recovery. She was stunned. This was an international platform, televised and streamed worldwide. "Are you sure you want me?" she asked the representative on the phone. "I'm just coordinating a pilot program." The woman on the line chuckled. "Zara Albright, you've become somewhat of a local hero. Word of mouth travels fast, and so does the internet. We'd be honored to have you share your perspective." Nervous excitement bubbled up inside her. She accepted the invitation, and preparations began immediately. Amina helped her pick out a professional outfit, something that would radiate confidence on stage. Dr. Felix coached her on the key points to address, from policy changes to personal stories that would inspire. On the morning of the conference, Zara felt a flutter of anxiety in her stomach as she walked into a large auditorium. Rows upon rows of seats were already filling up with healthcare professionals, advocates, and journalists. Cameras were positioned at various angles, their red lights blinking ominously. Standing backstage, she heard her name announced. She closed her eyes, inhaled, and walked onto the stage. Bright lights greeted her, along with a soft wave of applause. She spoke about the importance of holistic maternal care, the emotional toll of infertility, and the power of community support. Her voice trembled initially, but as she locked eyes with supportive faces in the crowd, she found her rhythm. She ended with a personal note, how she had been labeled barren yet now found herself caring for twins she never dreamed she'd have. Her final line resonated powerfully: no woman should ever be defined by her fertility alone. Each of us holds immeasurable worth and the capacity to nurture life, sometimes in ways we never expected. The crowd erupted in applause. As Zara stepped down from the podium, her heart felt light and proud. She walked backstage, finding Luca and Luna waiting with Amina. Both twins beamed up at her, clinging to her legs. She picked them up, tears of joy filling her eyes. Just beyond the stage, camera flashes went off, capturing the tender moment. Zara didn't realize then that these photos would soon become headline news, circulating on social media with captions like, "Woman once called barren emerges as advocate with her own twins." Jude's day started like every other, another loan officer calling to remind him of his obligations, another message from his lawyer about potential settlements. He sank into his office chair, flipping through the channels on his TV, searching for anything to distract him from his mounting troubles. Then he froze. On the screen was a replay of a high-profile health conference. He almost changed the channel until he heard a name that made his blood run cold: Zara Albright. He sat up, heart hammering. There she was, standing confidently on a stage, a gentle smile gracing her face. She spoke eloquently about maternal health, about the need for empathy and support. As the camera angle shifted, Jude's eyes widened in disbelief. Two children, twins, ran up to her, arms outstretched. She embraced them, and the audience cheered. Jude lurched forward, gripping the edge of his desk. His mouth went dry as he struggled to process what he was seeing. "Those are her twins?" he thought, mind racing. A wave of realization and regret slammed into him. He remembered their tumultuous last year together, his cruel words, "You can't even give me a child." Yet here she was, mother to two beautiful twins, thriving on a public stage while he spiraled into ruin. He fumbled for the remote, turning the volume up. The reporter's voiceover explained, Zara Albright, once told she could never conceive, found her miracle in a twist of fate. She's now a leading advocate for women's health and has turned her personal struggles into a beacon of hope for others. Jude felt something break inside him, a tumult of guilt, envy, and a strange longing. He dropped the remote and grabbed the back of his office chair to steady himself. Tears stung his eyes, uninvited and unwelcome, as his world turned upside down. He turned off the TV, but the image lingered, Zara, radiant and strong, surrounded by the children he'd once dreamed of having. The knowledge that she had found happiness without him seared his heart. For a moment, he nearly called out her name, as if she might appear in his office. But only empty silence answered. He sank into his chair, staring at the blank screen. She looks so alive, he thought, while my life is falling apart. And in that crushing instant, Jude realized that he might have lost the greatest treasure he ever had. The following evening, Zara was in her small apartment, cozy, decorated with bright rugs and children's drawings on the walls. Luca and Luna were finishing their dinner, giggling at a cartoon on TV. Zara felt warm contentment watching them. Every day, she grew more certain that fate had brought them together. Then there was a knock at the door. She paused, heart fluttering. It was late. Amina would have texted if she was coming. Carefully, Zara approached the peephole. Her breath caught in her throat. Jude? She hesitated, uncertain. But a part of her needed to face him. She unlocked the door and opened it slightly. He stood in the hallway, looking disheveled, dark circles under his eyes, hair unkempt. He took one look at her and exhaled shakily, shoulders slumping. Zara, he whispered, voice cracking. She kept the door partially shut. What do you want? Jude's lips quivered. He glanced past her into the apartment, possibly catching a glimpse of the twins. Tears filled his eyes. He sank to his knees, hands trembling. Please, he begged, hear me out. I'm sorry for everything. God, I've been a fool. Zara felt her own eyes sting with tears, but she stood firm, remembering the anguish he'd caused. Sorry, she echoed, voice tight. For telling me no one would ever love me? For leaving me alone in our marriage? For cheating on me? He winced at each accusation, hanging his head. I know. I deserve your anger. But I'm begging you, please, give me another chance. I made mistakes, I was under pressure, I was confused. Zara's hand tightened on the doorknob. She recalled all the nights she'd cried, all the self-doubt and misery. Yet she'd grown since then, become stronger. From behind her, Luca peered around the door. Mama, he asked uncertainly, eyes darting toward Jude. Jude let out a choked sob at the child's words. They call you Mama, he said, his voice filled with longing and regret. Are they mine, too? Zara's expression hardened. You lost the right to call them yours the moment you threw me away, she said quietly. You told me no one would love me. You were wrong. I'm loved, Jude. More than I ever was with you. His tears fell freely now. Zara, please. My life is falling apart. I have nothing left. I need you. She gazed at him sadly. That's not love, she murmured. That's desperation. A storm of emotions raged in her mind. Part of her remembered the happy times, the hopes they once shared. But the pain of his betrayal was carved too deeply into her heart. She swallowed, stepping back. You should go, she said, voice steady despite her shaking hands. We're done, Jude. He looked at her one last time, tears streaming, before staggering to his feet. She closed the door gently but firmly, leaning against it as she heard him sob on the other side for a moment. Then his footsteps faded down the hallway. Inside, Luca and Luna stared up at her, sensing the tension. She forced a smile and embraced them both. It's okay, she whispered. I'm not going back to that life, she told herself. We're moving forward. In the weeks that followed, clips of Zara's conference speech circulated online, amassing thousands, then millions, of views. Social media buzzed with headlines like, Woman once called barren becomes mother of twins and healthcare hero. Reporters reached out for interviews, philanthropic organizations wanted to collaborate with her, and women from across the globe sent messages of gratitude and admiration. Zara's inbox overflowed with stories from people who felt inspired by her journey, those who struggled with infertility, single mothers, or anyone who had been told they were not enough. She handled the influx of attention cautiously, knowing how quickly internet fame could become overwhelming. Yet, she also recognized the opportunity it presented to advocate for better maternal health care and support systems. She partnered with Dr. Felix and other healthcare professionals to launch a global fundraiser aimed at expanding maternal health resources in underserved communities. Sponsors lined up, impressed by her authenticity and resilience. Talk shows invited her as a guest speaker. A reputable publisher approached her about writing a memoir detailing her life story, from the heartbreak of infertility to the miraculous appearance of Luca and Luna. At home, her days were a juggling act of motherhood, media obligations, and her responsibilities at the clinic. Amina served as a makeshift publicist, screening interview requests, and ensuring Zara had time to rest. One afternoon, after a bustling day of meetings, Zara scrolled through a social media post that featured her story. She read the comments, thousands of them, from people cheering her on, sharing their own experiences, or simply expressing admiration for her courage. A lump formed in her throat as she realized how far she'd come. She was no longer the broken wife left on a cold kitchen floor. She was a beacon of possibility, living proof that life could reshape itself in unimaginable ways. With Luca and Luna at her side, she felt invincible, fueled by the knowledge that her story was now a source of light for so many. 18 months after she first took in Luca and Luna, Zara held the ribbon-cutting scissors at the grand opening of her own women's center, the House of Healing. The building was a dream come true, a spacious, welcoming facility offering counseling, prenatal and postnatal care, job training, and emotional support for women at every stage of motherhood. A crowd gathered outside, clapping as she snipped the ribbon. Journalists snapped photos, and a cheer went up, echoing down the city block. Amina grinned proudly at her side, while Dr. Felix offered a congratulatory handshake. Within the facility, 2 rooms in particular drew attention. One was labeled Luca's Hope, the other Luna's Light. On the plaques, short dedications explained how these rooms were made possible by 2 children who had appeared on a rainy night, changing Zara's life forever. After the ceremony, Zara slipped away from the crowd to show Luca and Luna their names on the walls. The twins were now about 4 years old, full of curiosity and chatter. "This is your room, Luca," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "A place for boys and girls who need hope." He touched the plaque, looking serious, then grinned. "Hope?" he asked. She nodded, tears brimming. "Yes, hope. Something you gave me." In the next room, Luna looked up at the sign bearing her name. "Light," she read, stumbling slightly over the letters. "Yes, Luna's light. You shine a light on all of us," Zara replied, hugging her gently. She guided them back to the main foyer, where staff and visitors mingled. Some women had traveled from faraway places to see this new center, seeking comfort or simply inspired by Zara's story. Zara felt a hand on her shoulder and turned to see an older woman with tears in her eyes. "Thank you," the woman whispered. "I lost everything, my home, my support, but seeing what you've built gives me hope that I can start again." Zara's chest tightened with empathy. She embraced the woman. "You can start again," she said softly. "That's why we're here." In that moment, she recognized how her pain had come full circle. She'd been at the brink of despair, yet somehow, she found a path to not only survive but thrive. Now, the House of Healing would serve as a beacon for others, a testament to the power of second chances and the resilience of the human spirit. A few months passed, and life settled into a new, beautiful rhythm. The House of Healing was thriving, Luca and Luna grew bolder and brighter each day, and Zara had just finished the first draft of her memoir. One crisp morning, she woke up before the twins and found herself alone in the apartment's small living room. A gentle beam of sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating her writing desk. She settled down with a cup of tea, opened her laptop, and began typing a personal letter to herself. She wrote, "Dear past Zara, I wish I could hold you in my arms the way I hold Luca and Luna now. I wish I could whisper in your ear, you are not broken. You're just waiting to bloom. I remember the tears you shed when every test turned negative, the nights you felt unloved and unwanted. But you were never unloved. You just forgot how to love yourself. You will find your place in this world. You will discover that motherhood can come in ways you never expected. You will become an anchor for women who thought they had nowhere to turn. More than anything, you will stand tall, not as Jude's wife or Miriam's scapegoat, but as Zara, strong, kind, and unstoppable. Please remember, you are loved. You are worthy. And no matter what life takes from you, it cannot take away your capacity to rise. All my love. Zara, the one who finally learned her worth. Tears blurred her vision as she finished typing. She saved the document, feeling a surge of catharsis wash over her. In the background, she heard the twins stirring, tiny voices calling Mama. She closed her laptop, wiping her eyes. She walked into the twins' room, where they bounced on their small beds, bright smiles lighting their faces. Zara scooped them both into her arms, heart nearly bursting with love and gratitude. The sun's rays fell on them like a blessing, golden and gentle. At that moment, she realized she didn't need Jude's validation or anyone else's to feel whole. She had her own story, steeped in pain yet bursting with triumph, and she had created a life that was authentically hers. As the camera of life's story panned out, Zara, once deemed barren, unloved, embraced the twins, a quiet smile on her face. She whispered, half to them and half to herself, I'm loved. And I always was. The end.